Is Kuro buying a Hex?
I think so.
It's an ultimate orb over on the
maybe
Lincoln,
maybe Hex. He could rupture the Bloodseeker if he plays
He's got 3,900 gold.
The Undying could rupture the Bloodseeker if he times it correctly. That would be a fun thing to see. Oh, you have a lot of movement speed? Let's see you ruptured.
The Soul Boost is heading back to base. That one belongs to S4.
Yeah, this game is all but over right now. Like,
yeah,
there has to be some desperation move by IG. Maybe if they smoke around, get behind the enemy lines, and try to do some 5-man action. But at this point, looking over to the net worth of heroes,
it's 23,000 on TA. You just bought a full BKB. It was a Lincoln's for the Bounty Hunter, and the Soul Booster is casually flying out to S4.
I mean, he just bought the MKB, and then he bought a BKB as well, all within 3 minutes. So, yeah, they definitely had some bank stashed up.
This is it for IG. Like, it's all or nothing.
Yep.
And they're trying to take this fight outside the base, so they're buffing up Luo and hoping they can pop someone.
Yeah, you should always buff him up before he does his ulti on Zeus. Very important. Even though it doesn't buff the full damage, it's still...
It's running out, but you just saw Ferrari do it, and they jump in. Now, S4 on the front lines. Ferrari hexed up. What do we get? Solo only Scream. S4, the Blood Ride's in a really good position, but with a Sonic Wave, the Zeus only doesn't do enough. They've lost 3. They're just trapped in the tree line. Teasy! Just one hit down Chuan, and that is game. They cannot win. GG, Team Secret, with over a 35,000 net worth advantage.
And the most convincing win that we've seen so far, including wildcard matches.
Very true.
This is a very tough game for IG.
That was a crushing. That was an absolute crushing by Secret on IG. We're going to have ourselves a break. We'll come back and compose our thoughts, as IG will also do the same. That was their first game of TI. Welcome to the International.
All right, game 1. As our casters were saying, probably the most convincing game we've seen so far in TI5. Of course, we just started, but still. And, of course, coming out from Secret, no big surprise there. Now, when we were looking at the draft earlier, we were looking at IG. We were talking about what can they do, maybe some early aggression and whatnot. The game, though, eventually didn't. The draft even didn't pan out exactly like what some of us were recommending. And now Secret just goes ahead and steamrolls through IG. Where does IG have to change things? Does it start from the draft, or do you think it was also just a lot of things in game?
I think the draft was good, honestly.
I think
they just flat out got outplayed. And a couple of things to highlight. I guess the ancient stack being stolen is a really big deal. It's an effective. I don't know how many stacks there were. If it was
I think it was 3.
So 3. So that's like a gold swing of you lose 1,000 and they gain 1,000. So this is 2,000 net worth swing right there, right? Which of course has a huge impact on the game. Maybe Gyro doesn't get a key item. Maybe that's what brings TA ahead in the game, right? And when you look at like the actual engagements and the timing, I think the way Secret utilized Undying as like a sponge for everything worked super well. Like they kept surprising IG, I think, with how much heal potential they actually had between Soul Rip and Dazzle, and of course the good timing on the Graves. And S4 is always in Queen of Pain. Amazing Sonic Waves the whole game, right? But that's to be expected when you give them co-op. So.
Okay, now something that we pointed out right before we went into the game was, okay, well, so they don't have any stuns. Like they don't really have any way to guarantee lockdowns on the side of Secret. Winter, do you think that the reason that worked out was simply because, like you mentioned, I mean, if any team's going to do that, it's Secret and they're confident enough? Or do you think that's still something that Secret should consider going into future drafts?
I don't think stuns are necessary if you have the right lineup and right execution. Because like most of the kills, they killed them so fast. Like TA just jumps in, melts, and you don't have time to TP or do anything. So you don't really need the stun in those type of situations. So I feel the lack of stuns obviously doesn't really matter too much in that game.
All right. Well, let's take a look at some replays as we talk more about the game. Of course, just to highlight some of the moments. I mean, a
makes
lot of
it very difficult for anyone else from IG to
focused.
chase down. And in fact, he doesn't even kill the Tombstone. He has to move over to help out against.
And as you talked about, Undying acting as a sponge up front. Rupture already blown on the Queen of Pain in the back line. And, I mean, it seems like IG, they just simply didn't have enough damage. And I think a lot of that was due to the early pipe pickup by Team Secret. And you'll very rarely see teams pick up pipe, but I think that Puppy and the rest of Team Secret actually pick it up far more often than most teams, and it's a really good item. Like it shouldn't be gotten as often as Mech, but they should be at least like comparable. And
against Zeus is really good.
Against Zeus is very good, and I think super underrated.
It's also nice against Gyro. The call down is a lot of AoE magic damage, and even if you the nice thing is there's no really you could argue that against some lineups utilizing pipe is difficult because you need to time it, you need to predict when the damage is going.
Yeah.
You need to precast it in comparison to mech that you post cast. So it's a reactionary item, whereas pipe is it's like use it preventatively.
Right.
But
the
it's
other
very easy against the Zeus
the
lineup.
item
It'll
is
always be useful.
expensive as well. Like it's hard to get on sometimes you want to get it on a lesser hero, but you can't get it on a lesser hero because it just requires too much farm, and you need to get it at a certain you mentioned a specific time. Otherwise, it will be maybe useless.
I mean, it's still 10% magic resist, Aura. With the
But the biggest thing is you want to use it to push. So you want to get it at a timing window that you can actually utilize it to push or siege high ground.
I mean, it's also just really useful for Bloodseeker skirmishes, even if you aren't pushing, so people don't get low. I feel like he wasn't able to really, get out of control.
So, I mean, overall, a situational item, but as you were mentioning, Secret does tend to kind of favor that a lot more, even in those niche situations, compared to other teams. We do have a couple other replays as we're looking through. Mostly, again, Secret just dominating against IG. But as you guys were mentioning, I think you guys brought out some good points. I mean, we were wondering, where does the Undying really fit here? We talked about how Secret doesn't like to play Undying that much, and here they are, bringing it out on the first day of TI5.
You can't. I think this is just a misplay from Burning. He's running into the pit alone with the gyro in front. Of course, he does have BK beyond, but he ultimately just gets completely out of position. He runs into a TA who's already killed Roche. That's a one-on-one he's not going to win against Arteezy right then. And then he has to run all the way back.
I mean, it just shows you his sense of desperation.
Yeah.
He has to do something, and maybe he'll get lucky enough that he gets bashed. Roshin's at one hit away. He takes it. It takes Aegis, and that's the sort of play that you have to hope for. I mean, it all starts with preventing TA getting the first Aegis, and that's really, really difficult. But once you're that far behind, you have to make those sort of plays.
All right, and we do have one last replay, pretty bloody one, where most people do end up dying and having to take a little break from the game. But as we take a look at that, just shows, again, how many fights we did have in this game where Secret ends up taking game one against IG.
This is actually the best fight IG get all game. Because they get a pretty good Winter's Curse, I think, in this one, in a moment. It isolates one target. They get S4 out. They actually, it's the call down that's really good. The Zeus ult. So they managed to finally clean up some kills. This is what their lineup wants to do. They want to get them low so that Bloodseeker can start hitting really hard. You see how he's laying into S4. But then this response just absolutely the way they're lined up.
Yeah.
This was actually, if that Sideblade hit doesn't splash all the way back, they actually get a decent trade. But Arteezy ends up cleaning up instead. And that's just in the heat of the moment, it's difficult to position yourself against an Aegis. You're not really paying attention to it.
Very true. I mean, especially because, like you said, it was the best fight they've had so far. They were very focused on the initial part of the fight, and then, unfortunately, didn't take into account the Aegis, and then, of course, TA coming back up, Arteezy cleaning up. Only last man alive, last man standing.
I think
was pretty happy about that.
Overall, the concept of not having enough stuns is a little overrated. I think that their lineup had a lot of positives. You mentioned they can kite people constantly with the tombstone and the traps. They have great chasing potential with the track, and they just have a ton of damage output. Who needs stuns when you just kill people in half a second? It doesn't really matter. So I think yes, having disables is important. Sometimes maybe you need to lock down an Ember or a Puck or a Queen of Pain, but having a lot of damage and other utility, because obviously you're sacrificing something if you don't have any stuns. But I think the benefits that they showcase in this lineup was definitely worth it.
The thing about this lineup that Secret is running is if you think of stuns, I like to think of ease of execution. When you have stuns, it's more determined. It's more defined how you're going to play. Right? It's this stun selects a target. This is the guy we go on. This is how we play it. But because Secret are so good at playing this style, they don't actually need it. But I would say you take the lineup Secret has, and you put it on lesser teams, they would have a really hard time making this lineup work and come together.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it's harder to execute if you don't have stuns and you don't have direct lockdowns. But it doesn't mean that it won't work. It's just harder.
Right. Yeah, it's not a necessity. It's just generally, if you have the choice, most people would choose to take a stun in that last spot. But Secret, proving that they don't necessarily need it. We do have some updates from the other matches. We were watching a couple of them outside. LGD is up 1-0 against Complexity. And then between Navi and C9, the game isn't over, but Navi seems to be ahead. But we know that can go either way when C9's in the game. So we'll have to wait and see until the game ends, and then we'll find out when we get a secure
you only needed
update.
to get 2.5 hours into TI before you made that call. Very impressive.
I caught right on to that one. Hey, after watching the first match, I was like, all right, I see what's going on. I got you, C9. All right, well, game 2 coming up here between Secret and IG. We were just looking at the players, obviously going through just a couple last-minute reviews. And something we discuss every time, how much do drafts need to change? So far, someone was calculating on day 0, so yesterday for the wildcard play-ins, we had, 50 heroes that were picked and banned, and 44 of them were played at least once, so picked at least once. So already a pretty big diversity, so generally that means that we have been seeing changes overall. It seems like most people are taking that advice to heart, where you don't want to run the same lineup twice, whether you're winning or losing, especially in a best of 2, right? Because it's not like we're up 1-0 and then we have another shot. It's like you want to secure that 2-0.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you bring out something new. On the side of IG, you guys already said that draft-wise, we're looking at Tron being pretty aggressive about something you wanted to point out in game 1. But if the draft wasn't the problem and in-game was an issue, do you still think that they should try something new just to give a change of pace for the team, for IG, I mean?
I think it's more Secret's flexibility that's overcoming IG rather than something that IG is doing. I mean, IG is just playing their, sort of standard game Ferrari, trying to do heavy damage, burning, on a hero like he normally plays. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem like anything unusual, right? Whereas Secret, you never know what they're going to pick. We saw them run Keeper of the Light and the Queen of Pain, and they always have some different elements. I haven't seen TA on Arteezy in a pretty long time. And it's just always unexpected. And even during a draft, we're like, oh, they never pick Undying third pick. And then, they roll with it. And it's just you never really know what's coming from Secret. And I think that's why they're one of the most formidable teams.
All right. I mean, Winter, any thoughts on IG, whether something they can look for a draft, something that you might even advise if you were there? I
think mainly it's the support. So I feel as much as you talk about Ferrari and the other cores, but I think the primary issue is whether you give Tron and Faith supports that can roam and kill. Wyvern is in my opinion, very defensive at times, and you can't really be very confident in initiating fights. Sometimes you want to wait before you drop your ultimate instead of using your ultimate as a first move spell or trying to make a gang happen. So I would much rather see something like what I mentioned before, a Mirana or even a Conquer, more aggressive play.
Yeah, that's something you guys kept bringing up. We didn't see that in game 1. While we wait, we do have this beautiful scoreboard behind us for the group standing so far.